Mom put me up for adoption after my dad passed away, choosing her new husband and his family. My adoptive parents helped me succeed, and now Mom wants to reconnect with me at my wedding. I'm your mother, so I said. My name is Helen Anderson, and I grew up in what I thought was the ideal American family. We weren't rich at first, but we were happy. Just me, Mom, and Dad living in our modest starter home. My father, James Anderson, was the hardest working man I've ever known. He built his transportation company from the ground up, starting with just 2 trucks and gradually expanding into a successful business. I remember how he'd sometimes come home covered in grease because he insisted on maintaining the trucks himself in the early days. Mom, Sarah is her name though I can barely bring myself to call her that anymore, worked as a restaurant manager back then. She was actually good at her job, though she'd constantly complain about it. One day, James, she'd say during dinner, pushing food around her plate, I want to be a proper housewife. All these late nights are killing me. Dad would just smile and pat her hand, promising her that soon she'd be able to quit. And he kept that promise. When I was 9, Dad's business really took off. He landed several major contracts, and suddenly we were moving into this beautiful 2-story house in one of the nicest neighborhoods in town. I got my own room, huge and bright with windows looking out over our backyard. I went wild with the decoration, pale purple walls, fairy lights everywhere, and this massive bookshelf Dad built himself. He spent an entire weekend on it, cursing under his breath when he thought I couldn't hear him but beaming with pride when it was finally finished. Mom quit her job shortly after we moved, just like she'd always wanted. Instead of taking care of the house like she'd claimed she wanted to, she was barely ever home. It was always lunch with the girls or just a quick shopping trip or my salon appointment ran late. Dad didn't seem to mind. He was too busy with his company, though he always made time for me. Every Sunday was a day we'd go for ice cream, and he listened to all my stories about school and friends as if they were the most important things in the world. The last time we had ice cream together was just before I turned 11. It was a bright spring day, and Dad was telling me about one of his drivers calling in sick. Guess I'll have to do the run myself tomorrow, he said, finishing his cone. Just like the old days. Can I come with you? I asked, excited at the prospect of a road trip with Dad. He chuckled and ruffled my hair. Not this time, princess. It's just a quick overnight trip. I'll be back before you know it. I remember hugging him extra tight that evening before bed. Love you, Dad, I said, not knowing it would be the last time I'd ever say those words to him. The next morning, he left before dawn. Mom was still asleep, so Maria, our nanny, made his coffee and packed him a lunch. I heard him start his truck and pull out of the driveway. That was the last time I ever saw my father alive. A phone call came at 347 am. I know because I was awake, unable to sleep due to that strange feeling in my stomach. I heard Mom scream from her bedroom, followed by the sound of something breaking, probably her bedside lamp. The next few hours are a blur in my memory, police officers in our living room, Maria holding me tight while Mom paced back and forth talking on the phone, words like massive collision, and died instantly floating around me like dark butterflies. Dad's truck had collided with a semi that had jackknifted across the highway. They said he didn't suffer, as if that was supposed to make it better somehow. But nothing made it better, nothing could bring back my father. The funeral is mostly a haze in my mind. I remember staring at the closed casket, not really believing Dad was inside. Mom put on quite a show, wailing and practically throwing herself across the casket at one point. Looking back now, I realize how theatrical it all was, but at 11, I thought that's just how adults handled grief. It was at the funeral that I met Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia for the first time. They looked so much like strangers, yet Uncle Robert had Dad's eyes, the same kind crinkly corners when he tried to smile at me through his tears. Helen, he said, kneeling down to my level, I'm your father's brother. I'm so sorry we're meeting like this. Why haven't I met you before? I remember asking, direct as only kids can be. A shadow crossed his face. Her father and I, we had a disagreement many years ago, but none of that matters now. I had to come say goodbye to my little brother. After the funeral, Mom's grief evaporated like morning dew. Within weeks she was meeting with Dad's lawyers, taking control of his company, and acting like she knew the first thing about running a transportation business. She started throwing around terms like restructuring and modernization, but it was obvious she was just making things up as she went along. I spent most of my time with Maria, who would shake her head sadly whenever Mom came home with shopping bags from expensive stores. Her mother spending money like water, Maria muttered one day while making my lunch. Those poor drivers haven't been paid properly in weeks. She was right. Dad's employees started quitting one by one. These were men and women who'd worked for him for years, some since the beginning. I remembered their names, their faces, how they used to bring me little presents from their roots. Now they were leaving, unable to feed their families on promises and excuses. 6 months after Dad's death, Mom sold what was left of his company for a fraction of what it had been worth. She acted like she'd made some brilliant business decision, but everyone knew the truth. She'd run Dad's life's work into the ground. After the sale of Dad's company, Mom was rarely home, always out somewhere, and I spent most of my time with Maria. She'd started teaching me Spanish, saying it would come in handy someday. I spent a lot of time at the library after school. It was better than coming home to an empty house. Mom would breeze in late at night, sometimes smelling of wine, barely acknowledging my existence. "Oh, you're still up," she'd say as if surprised to find me in my own home. Then she'd disappear into her room, and I wouldn't see her again until the next evening if at all. Then came that Sunday night. I was doing homework in the kitchen when Mom burst through the door, giggling like a teenager. She wasn't alone. Helen, sweetie, she called out, her voice thick with fake enthusiasm, come meet Richard. Richard was tall and wore an expensive suit that somehow still looked cheap. His smile didn't reach his eyes when he looked at me. Helen, Mom said, clutching Richard's arm like a lifeline, Richard and I got married last weekend. He's your new father. We're going to be a proper family again. I already had a proper family, I said, my voice shaking. I already have a father. Richard's fake smile disappeared. Listen here, young lady, he said, his voice stern, your mother and I are married now. You need to accept that and show some respect. You're not my father, I spat back. You'll never be my father. See what I mean? Richard turned to Mom. Difficult child. Needs discipline. But Richard moving in was just the beginning. Within a week, his mother Gloria, his sister Janet, and his 12-year-old niece Madison had all moved in too. They took over the house like an invading army, rearranging furniture and changing the decor Mom and Dad had picked out together. Mom didn't seem to mind. She and Janet became instant best friends, spending hours shopping and gossiping. Gloria took over the kitchen, complaining about Maria's cooking until Mom fired her. I lost the only person who still cared about me in that house. Then came the final blow. I came home from school one day to find Madison in my room that Dad had built the bookshelf in, my room with the purple walls and fairy lights.